Hello and welcome to this episode of A Clean Bill of Wealth podcast. I'm your host, Galen Nuttall, and this podcast is all about supporting physicians, especially Canadian ones, in all areas of life, including finance, well-being, family, and practice. Now, a quick question before we hop on over to the episode. Are you working with an advisor and you're confused as to how they get paid and are left wondering if you're getting value for the fee that you are paying? If so, you are not alone, and I've got good news for you because I've got something for you. If you hop on over to GalenHelpsDocs.com, that's Galen helpsdocs.com, because that's how my name is spelled, you can download a free service guide that spells out exactly what it's like to work with me, either on a fee-based basis or other ways. And I've got direct links to 2 videos that explain how fees work in general and my top tips on how to pick an advisor that's going to be a good fit for you. And you'll also be on my list to be the first to find out when I release a new podcast episode, YouTube video, or when I've scheduled a webinar for physicians and their partners. And while you're on the site, you can read up on how I support physicians with big decisions like how can I make the most of my corporation, or am I on track for retirement? So thanks for checking that out. And be sure to go to GalenHelpsDocs.com to check out that guide and the links to those videos. And now on with the show. All right, so first off, welcome to the show, Brenda St. Louis, coming at me all the way from Vancouver, right? Somewhere out in BC. Yeah, awesome.
Mm-hmm.
No, thanks for being on. So for anyone who doesn't know, Brenda St. Louis is an accredited financial counselor, financial therapist, certified money coach, trauma of money facilitator, and certified financial planner candidate. So certainly a lot going on there. And what really, we met kind of randomly on Facebook. I saw a video you had around money archetypes, and I'm very fascinated by the idea of money mindset, the way we relate to money. And yet I don't know, honestly, I don't know a ton about it. I don't know really how to engage people in that conversation. I know enough from conversations I've had and experience I've had, but certainly nothing compared to the degree you have. So I'm very interested in hearing the insight you have around this topic.
I love talking about money, and just bringing it to archetypes is really fun because it's a great way for people to kind of look at themselves without judging themselves. And I know that you ended up taking the quiz too. Some people take the quiz, and it was really interesting when you had said that, you want to answer the questions honestly in the quiz, because it gives us a sense of what our behaviors are and how we can support them and heal maybe some of the things that are in the way of us having a joyful relationship with money. So I don't know, do you want to talk a little bit about the money archetypes and go into that with a little more depth?
Yeah, I'd love to. Definitely. I think that's a good place to go. I mean, obviously you're the expert, so we'll go wherever makes sense. But to give some context to people, I mean, tell us a bit more. You've got a quiz that I just took about earlier today because I wanted to know my archetype, and I haven't told you my archetype yet. I figured I'd tell you live on the show. But yeah, tell us about the archetypes. Tell us about the quiz. People need to know.
Well, I have been doing financial therapy and money coaching for the last 13 years. And I found that, there's a lot of emotional stuff up around money. I think it's one of the most emotional and energetic blocks for a lot of people. People have done so much personal development on themselves, their body, their spirit. But money seems to be the last holdout for a lot of people. And it was, for me, a really challenging place to navigate myself. So about 13 years ago, I really wanted to make this my life's work and work on both sides of the game, the financial literacy, being confident, understanding what you're doing, being a badass with money, to having a really emotionally healthy and balanced relationship with money. And I found that those two things often didn't go together, unfortunately. And so it's been a journey. It's been a powerful and amazing journey of discovering what works and what doesn't work around money. And I really would love to talk about the money archetypes. But before I do, I want to talk about this kind of holistic approach to money, because we have our right brain and our left brain, and our right brain is kind of that emotional feeling, spacious, creative, intuitive part. And our left brain is more that linear numbers, the balance of the good, the bad, the right, and the wrong kind of thing. Right. And when we study numbers and learn about budgeting and investing and all that stuff, you have to engage that part of your brain. And what happens when people engage this part of the brain, this part shuts off. And when people engage the emotional brain, the intellectual brain shuts off.
Okay, yeah.
I think that's the biggest problem with money, right? So we have to be able to navigate and go back and forth so that we get a little more muscle, a little more facility about going into the right brain and the left brain. So the work that I do marries, okay, let's learn about finance. How are you feeling? How are you regulating? What's going on in your body? What's going on so you don't blast through the body when you're doing this? And then we go to process in, we could do somatic work, we could do tapping, we can do cognitive therapy. I am a hypnotherapist, so I do a lot of work with bringing people down into that trance state to rewire some of the programs that we might have inherited from our family and things like that.
Oh man, so much to talk about there. So first off, I try not to like regret anything, but I wish I'd met you 10 years ago when I became a financial advisor, because what you said really, earlier today, I was literally talking to someone about this, which is, as a financial planner, sometimes I feel stuck when people are making completely what I consider to be illogical decisions. And so like when I became a financial advisor, basically what they said was you take people through a process, you find out what they care about, you find out how much money they have, you find out how much they can put away, and then like it was kind of like this very numbers based, like there's some goal setting, but like pretty superficial. And then it was like, and then there's like this common thing of let the numbers do the talking. And so I had this thought when I became an advisor that if I could prove to someone with numbers that this decision was better than this decision, they would just go ahead and do it. That is completely inaccurate. Almost like, I don't know about all the time, but like a lot, because I would say, hey, look at this thing. This approach statistically is a better approach than this approach. So obviously the rational brain is going to do this. And it wasn't happening all, consistently. And I still I literally met with someone a couple of weeks ago, and they have a whole bunch of money invested. We met years ago, right before the pandemic hit. They had this issue. The pandemic hit. They're about, it kind of slowed things down. We met again recently to talk about the same issue they have 2 years later. And they're with other advisors. And they literally said to me, my current advisors don't care about me. But they're not moving. Like, and they said, Gail, I can tell you'd care about me, but I'm still not going to move. And I remember like, wow, that just doesn't make logical sense to me. So I know there's a lot going on, right? Like there's different personality things and all that. But I will say, like, when you said that when you're using this side of the brain, this side shuts down. And when you're using this side shut down. I see that all the time.
And it's kind of like, it's what your physiology does.
Yeah.
It's survival in a lot of ways, but we are capable of evolving.
Good.
And the world around money and creating a healthy relationship with money involves three things. And the first thing is peace. If you're feeling scarcity and you're not trusting and you feel like the carpet's going to be pulled out from underneath you and all of that stuff, you don't have peace, you just can't relax. And I work with millionaires that have struggled with peace. Like it's not about the amount of money in your bank. It's about how do you develop and cultivate a peaceful relationship with money. And then the second piece is confidence. It's like, okay, well, if someone's throwing all this jargon at me, what is it? And if you have confidence about how money works, how the rules work, and all of that stuff, that if someone's going to pull the wool over your eyes, you're going to see it, you're going to know it, and you can navigate it. Confidence also is negotiating your wage. It's everything from taking a stand about something that there's injustice around it financially. And then the last thing is joy. Because why are we here in the first place? We're supposed to enjoy things and understand the beauty of the fabric you're wearing or the food you're eating. And joy is multi-layered. So joy also is, it doesn't take from someone else. So you might be buying organic food, right? So that the pesticides are not destroying the planet, or you might be buying local, or you're not buying fast fashion that's going to go into the landfill in 6 months. So joy has all kinds of ethical pieces, a part of it too. But when you have peace, confidence, and joy dialed in brilliantly,
Mm.
You could have all your money taken away from you and you'd be fine.
Mm.
That's
All
a
right.
healthy relationship with money.
Okay. So yeah. And I mean, I'm just gonna say, like, when you said that, I'm like, is that really true? And I do believe you. But like, there's this sense of like I and like to be like to look at the history of things. Like I like hypnotherapy and things like that. Like I had like up to about 5 years ago, I had zero experience with any of those modalities around like some of the somatic hypnotherapy, any sort of meditation. I had zero experience with any of that. So if I'd had this conversation 5 years ago, I would have nodded politely and said, sure, sure, sure. And now I'm like, all right, let's take a look at this. Like, so having peace, having confidence, having joy, because and I get that. Like, and like you said, like absolutely what you said. Like, it doesn't necessarily matter how much you have. Like, it's not a matter of, oh, once I have X, then these things will happen, which is commonly what people think, right? Like, once I have whatever number someone has assigned to financial peace or financial stability or whatever, once I have that much saved up, then all these things will happen. And it sounds like creating that creating that peace, confidence, and joy completely independently of the actual numbers. Is that more or
Well,
less accurate, or
it's not independent because you
right?
can't have confidence unless you're working with your numbers, and you can't have
Mm,
peace unless you are interacting. And there's so many great examples for this. Like, I lived in Seoul, Korea for like 8 years. I made tons of money. I did television and radio and all of that stuff. And I just spent it like you wouldn't believe. Like, I just blew through it and I felt so abundant and I enjoyed everything. I knew nothing about money.
mm,
And when I came back to Canada and tried to get my life going again, money just fell through my fingers. Like, I couldn't do anything. And I went back into scarcity. I had the fear. I had that, like, and tightening up. And I'm like, oh, I thought I had done my work around money. And
mm,
so, like, there's this, you get to test it, right? So, like, in 2008, I had a really, really, um, inspiring mentor. And in 2008, his entire wealth gone.
mm,
Ran a couple companies that went bankrupt, and he
wow.
had zero, nothing. He had a lot of debt that he had to take with him, but he had zero, nothing. And he was happy. He was so balanced. And I was like, what's going
Mm.
on? He's like, well, I can make it again. I mean,
Oh
it's
wow.
easy to do this, and so he embodied a healthy relationship with money,
Mm.
right? He didn't go into scarcity and lack and fear. So it is a state of mind, but you actually have to understand money. You have to
Yeah.
know it. You have to engage with it. You have to have an intimacy with what I say.
Yeah, that's really good. Okay, so yeah, so it's definitely not disconnected, but it's like you're present, you know what's happening, you have a familiarity with it, you're not afraid of it, like you're not hiding from the reality of it. And I think that's yeah, that's really great. And I can see how that would be a very, like, just like you said, like when you said that he lost everything, I thought you were then gonna say, and then his life was over, his life was ruined. Like, I didn't think you were about to say, and he was fine with it because he said I could just make it again. And I can't help but think, like, well, having that attitude probably led him to be able to do it all over again.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if he had said, wow, I'm never going to let that happen again, or I regret what happened, like if it had been a different mindset towards it, he probably wouldn't have been able to kind of
Exactly.
rebuild.
Yeah,
Mm,
for sure. That's so true. And it's interesting, like when we talk about the money archetypes, I often, well, the money, there's about 33 different types of Jungian archetypes out there, but I
mm,
have just used 9 of them. I combined a couple and made my own money archetypes, the way that we
mm,
work with money. And it was based on the certified money coach founder, Deborah Price. So she has her own value of it. And I've kind of riffed off it a little bit and created
mm,
something that matches what I see with people.
mm,
So the first one is innocent. And that's what we all are when we're born, right?
mm,
We
mm,
don't have to take care of our clothes or food and everything's taken care of. But as a kid, you don't worry about money. If you do, then you probably don't have a really healthy innocent. okay, as a kid, because some kids are put to work at a young age and their value is connected to their worth and what they do, kind of thing. So innocent has all kinds of things attached to it. But as an adult, if you stay in innocent and you don't grow up, it shows up as like your head in the sand. You don't want to look at those bills, everything. It just you're not good with numbers, and you're afraid that the carpet's going to be pulled out from underneath you. But you act happy. You act like everything's okay, and you generally hitch your wagon to someone that is good with money, that will take care of you. Right. So I work with a lot of innocents that maybe have left a marriage and they didn't know anything about finance. And they were like, I don't know. So they're it's a very beautiful beginner's mind kind of beautiful place to be. But it could be really disempowering when you don't have any knowledge around money. The second one is the orphan. And the orphan, these two are the real young ones. The orphan is the one that grows up with, maybe really neglectful parents or abusive home, or they just lose confidence in authority and the powers to take care of them. So they feel like they have to take care of themselves, and they can learn how to manipulate. They can learn how to lie and cheat and steal because no one's going to take care of them but themselves. But they blame the world for everything that's happened to them. So they don't take responsibility. So they might say that boss, he hired me and I didn't do anything wrong, or it was the economy, or I work really hard and nothing works for me. So there's a lot of blame externally around why they are where they are. There's a huge amount of resilience of an orphan. I often say orphans are the strongest archetype because they survive the worst conditions, so they have a lot of tenacity, strength, and compassion too. The next one is the fool. This is the one that, will give you the shirt off their back and they don't even know it's the last shirt they own. And they'll gamble, they'll take risks. They're like adrenaline junkies, not very responsible, not very disciplined. They generally land on their feet because they roll the dice more than any other archetype. So they might win more than anyone else, but they also lose really big. And it's really hard for a fool to build a foundation. They're just building more and more. I was a fool. I think I still have tendencies of a fool, but I always say it's like I'm on this yacht and I'm drinking champagne and having caviar and it's dancing and it's so much fun. And then all of a sudden someone throws me off the yacht and I'm holding onto a flotation device waiting for the next yacht to come by. Yeah. Right. So I never have my own yacht. And I remember at one point, I'm like, I want my own yacht. I need to build something. So that's a graduation from the fool. The next one is the artist. They're the one that money is the root of all evil. They give away all their money, or they don't know how to put a price on what they're worth or what they do. It's hard for them to have a relationship with money, and they feel like it taints their art or their creativity. Right. So they don't have a really dynamic relationship with the physical world. They're more in that kind of ethers creation zone more than anything. So they don't take care of their things. Like, they usually don't eat properly and they're like, it's like they can be very hermity as well. And then there is the caregiver. So the caregiver is the one that takes care of everyone. They rescue everyone. A really enlightened caregiver can't help it. It's just part of who they are. They need to take care. They need to do this. And it's so satisfying and nurturing for them. A really imbalanced caregiver gives so much that they don't know how to receive. So they're on empty, they're resentful, they might be passive aggressive. Caregivers are often perfectionists, and they want people to be grateful for what they do. If you're not, you will feel the wrath. So caregivers can be really, really authentically powerful and gifted, and they also could be detrimental to the process of having a healthy relationship with money. There's two more. No, there's three more.
Three more.
Are you good? Do you have any questions so far?
No. This is amazing. I'm looking for these characteristics and like looking who do I know that might match up. And I'm definitely going to share the quiz, and we'll definitely tell everyone the link of the quiz once we finish all 9 of them. But yeah, no, keep going.
So then we have the tyrant. The tyrant has the energy of there's never enough. And I call it almost like a disease in a way. Like they never feel like there's enough, so they have to hoard. They have to hold on to things. They can show up as kind of gentle giants in a way, but very relentless in wanting all the details. They're the spreadsheet. I need the receipt for this, and marking all the paper and making sure that everything matches and consolidates or reconciles properly. A lot of times an innocent will marry a tyrant, and there's a bit of a role there that they're playing with each other, because one's taking care and the other one is being taken care of. The tyrants are the quintessential politicians, where there's never enough. There's never enough. More. And they personally never feel like there's enough. You can be a self-tyrant where you don't feel like you're enough. No matter what you do, you're always never doing it properly. Tyrants, when I'm working with a tyrant, I often get them to volunteer, because they don't realize that they have worth beyond the dollar a lot of time. So when they give back and they contribute back, they realize, oh, and most of the time a tyrant didn't really get the love that they needed as a kid. So everyone, when they think when someone does the quiz and they think they're a tyrant, they feel awful. And I'm like, a tyrant just needs to be held, really, and it's in the money world, they're revered. They probably are great savers. They have tons of money. They get a pat on the back for that. And it's not fair, because they don't actually have a deep relationship of satisfaction and peace. And then the next one is the warrior. So the warrior is the one that will do what it takes to make it happen. So they know where they're going. They're going to work hard. They'll educate themselves to get the job done. They'll learn about finance. They'll save. Single moms are the ultimate warriors often, because they can make ends meet with very little, And warriors will, they're often justice oriented. Like they want to take care of the underdog, like they have the hero complex. So you can have a really weary warrior that is just working all the time for everyone and saving everyone, and they just get tired. So they don't know how to receive help from other people that maybe can support them. And there's like all kinds of different warriors, different types of warriors, but an enlightened warrior just really leads the way and does what it needs to be done, and is very resilient and disciplined in the process. And then the last one is the wise elder. And this is my addition to the archetypes, because I believe that we're moving into a new place with money. And the wise elder is telling a new story. And they're holding that pillar of joy. When I talked about peace, confidence, and joy, oh my God, I missed one more. There's one after this one. So the warrior holds confidence, and the wise elder holds peace. Joy. So they're not going to be succumb to marketing. They'll use their money to create impact in the world. And they're just telling a new story about the power that they have in the world with their money. So it's a really amazing place to lean into once you've dialed in all your understanding about money. It's like, okay, now what are you going to do with it? And then the last one is the wizard. The wizard is the pillar of peace. And the wizard is the master manifester. They're the ones that believe that the universe has your back and it's all going to be okay. They have a really dialed in intuition, so they know when to go and when to stay. They might know when to invest in a certain place and when to pull it out. So there's just this really a knowing and a trust. They trust that it's all going to be okay and more than okay. So those are the 9 money archetypes.
Very cool. And yeah, definitely, as you were talking, I was thinking of different interactions I've had with different people, and, very much seeing this reflected. I was definitely going to ask some people to take the quiz so they can discover for themselves. But, certainly I'm seeing the client of mine who earned very little their whole lives, but somehow managed to save an incredible amount of money. And I have no idea how they did it. Definitely that warrior type. And then definitely have met, from at least from what you've said, the tyrant, people who come to the table with lots of spreadsheets and consume information, and it's never enough. So I have one question that I feel like ties into this. And again, like I'm constantly striving to learn like the best way to approach different types of people with the work that I do, and like different, like, I mean, I have a core foundational approach that I follow, but I'm happy to like adapt a bit. And the question would be around goal setting. And my favorite way to bring on a client is to start with what's really most important to them and why it's really most important to them, and then build a plan that's going to support that in their lives, and do as much as I can for them not to feel like, let's say someone says their goal is to retire or to buy a cottage or something that's in the distant future, how to have them experience whatever they think they're going to experience once they hit that now, and not have to wait to experience that. But it's pretty fascinating, especially when I have a couple sitting there, like, partners. And I ask the question, where do you, 3 years from now, like, where do you see yourselves, or what would you like to achieve? Sometimes people are very open to that question. Sometimes people really like don't respond to that question. Some people, like, I had a conversation with someone, multimillionaire, a few weeks ago. They wanted to work. They said, okay, maybe I'll work with you. I said, yeah, sure. And I said, what are you trying to do with all this? Like, what's the end goal? Like, you've been able to save a tremendous amount of money. You've still got a decade of work left. Like, where are you headed? And they couldn't tell me. And I felt like I was failing them in some way because I couldn't figure it out with them. And I just was like, with me, I just kind of stopped, because I say, I don't know how to measure success if we can't figure out why you're doing it. Like, why are you even saving money in the first place? And so, like, I'm just kind of like fascinated by that. Different people respond very differently to the idea of like setting a goal of what
Well, I
they're doing.
think it's like I have a practice with every client that comes in where we get 10 goals, because most often people just can write 3, right?
Yeah.
But they have to write 10, right? And we go through each one of the goals, and they have to describe what that feels like. It is not always monetary either.
Yeah.
And like for the millionaire, I've worked with someone, they were like, I don't know, I've made enough money, I've got a great family, I'm healthy, I go on vacation, I don't know what I want, right? And then so we start to talk about what's meaningful for them. And a lot of times they're like, yeah, like maybe I'd like to volunteer, or I'd like to, like create something, or like whatever. And so there's a feeling around it. And I'm like, well, would you like to build a foundation? Do you know what I mean? Like, would you like to have a foundation with this money where it's constantly being reinvested and contributing to something you find meaningful? And would you like to be on the board of it? Would you like to be like, like that kind of thing? Like, just like play with different ideas that would open them up to think of different possibilities. But once you get those goals, I tighten them. I'm a wordsmith, right? So we tighten them into one clean sentence. And we have the 10 goals, and they have to be moving towards those goals every day during the 3 months that I work with them anyway. And so one thing could be, what would be a good goal? What goal have you that you've heard recently? Or what goal do you have, let's say?
What goal do I have? So a goal I have would be to travel in January, like skip the coldest weeks of the year. So like, travel for like 3 weeks out of the year to escape the winter a little.
So like one step that you could make today about that is look at a picture of a beach, or go online and look at something that would really enrich you, that would feel different than where you are right now. Like, that's one energy, like you've activated it. And I like what you said, like you want to have the feeling now rather than it being 10 years ago, right? You have to bring it into your experience. So it could be the similar thing, like you thought of it. You talked about it to your partner. You imagined what it would be like to be, tanned. Like, you know what I mean? I don't know.
Yeah. Warm sand, salty breeze. Yeah, definitely like
Yeah.
the sensation of it all. I got that. Yeah. So I mean, when you say working towards that goal, it's not necessarily putting away $10. It could be, really getting present to what that goal means for me, or like taking a look at it. Yeah. I mean, I really love that, because I definitely find like, like I'll meet some of my younger clients will say, "Oh, I want to own a home," and I say, "Great, have you picked one out?" Or have you looked for one? And they're like, "No," like, because I'm not gonna be able to save up, especially the way that housing is now. I mean, if I talk to someone in Vancouver or Toronto, it's like, how are they gonna do it? So I'm like, you haven't even picked what you want. Like, start looking. And sometimes that's that leap of, and I get that, like, it's that leap of, oh, I'm dreaming too big, or like this is premature, or like, am I allowed to think this way? Like, definitely that comes up for people, I think.
Yeah, for sure. And once you leap past that, it's like the goal comes closer, right?
Mm-hmm.
I have this amazing mortgage broker I refer people to, and she knows that sometimes they're just not in the market, but she sits them down, talks about how much they need, what it would look like, and
Mm-hmm.
all these things and everything. And they're like, oh, wow, it is possible,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Like I call with a friend who's in Toronto, doesn't want to be in Toronto much longer, wants to be out of Toronto. So we got on a Zoom call. I shared my screen. I went on realtor.ca and I was like, "Where do you want to live?" And we started looking. I was like, let's figure it out. And they're actually kind of shocked that, out my way, a bit away from the city, you can still find things reasonable. Yeah. So, and I think like what I really want to like make sure I take away from this is, what I'm getting is like, if someone is struggling to set the goal in the context that I've given them, which is usually like, let's fast forward a few years, looking back, what would you like to have achieved? Not just financially, like I do say personally, like in the areas of life important. What I'm seeing is maybe drilling more into, like you're saying, like what's important to them, what lights them up, like when do they feel the most, like, because I've done things around like helping people identify their superpowers. So I say things like, what can you get lost doing for hours? Like, what do you do that makes time stand still? Like those kinds of questions. And I'm seeing that I could bring a little bit in that when people start faltering or like not being able to connect with the goal setting questions, like the more traditional ones.
Yeah. That's a beautiful way of doing it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Giving it
because
time too. It's not a rush
yeah,
practice.
yeah. Yeah,
Mhm.
for sure. Because it is, and I mean, I say to people, like, we're gonna have an uncommon conversation, especially if it's a couple. Like, you guys have probably never. There's a quite a good chance you've never answered these questions together or ever to anyone. Like, where do you want to be? And I have gotten a little bit more what's the word, flexible in my approach. Like, it used to be like, people have to come up with this very set way of having a goal, and it's not always the case at all. So yeah, and I can see how different archetypes respond to that question in different ways. I can see how the artist might just say, well, I don't even want to talk about the money side of things, or and so when it comes to these archetypes, this I can't help but wonder is, do you think that different professions tend to be different archetypes, or do you think, like you said, the single mom is a warrior? Like, do you feel like there's tendencies, that like run? I mean,
You
I'd
would,
hesitate. Yeah, go ahead.
I think there's more masculine and feminine
Okay,
archetypes too, but it's not always that way.
sure.
I think I have more tyrant women that I work with than
Mm,
and more caregiving men that are
mm,
like contributing and giving back. So I never want to
interesting.
genderize them, but
Sure.
professionally, I think like an accountant might be more of a I've worked with accountants and financial advisors that just wanted a deeper emotional relationship with money, and they were great
Mm,
numbers, right? But
mm,
that was their safety. It was their safety blanket looking at the numbers that made
mm,
sense logically, but they didn't have a connection to the emotional piece, right? So
mm.
that could show up as many archetypes, but it probably isn't an innocent, right? Like an
Right.
innocent doesn't know anything about money. So innocents are nonprofit employees. They're people. There can be artists as well as innocents
Sure.
that way. They're usually people that may be moms that married young and stayed moms and didn't have a job. They could be, even young millennials. There was a study done that I couldn't believe it. 65% of millennial women wanted a man to take care of them. And it's like all the feminists that have done all the work in the world to like create these independent women that are creating their own. And now the new young 30-year-olds are like, no, I just want to stay at home and be taken care of,
Wow, that is surprising. Yeah.
Oh,
Interesting.
it's interesting.
Yeah. No, that is interesting. Yeah. So I mean, definitely I can see how different people would be different archetypes would be attracted to different types of work. Like you're not likely going to find an innocent that's all that interested in working in any sort of financial, gain, that side of things. So yeah, no, that's really cool. And then what would you say, like, so what would you say is the biggest win for someone to understand their archetype? Like, let's say you take the quiz, you get your archetype. Now what?
Well, like a great example is an innocent that because I'll get innocents that reach out to me because they are afraid of people taking advantage of them, right? Because they don't know anything. So there's this awareness that they don't know anything, and then holding their hand step by step to get more and more educated. And you watch them like go, I know my stuff. Like, there's this confidence that comes in and they feel like they can hold their own. So when you've watched like a tyrant who is so in the ledger systems and looking at everything and being very closed, you don't, because it's like scary. It's scary to be in the emotional landscape. Yeah. And then all of a sudden they recognize that there's more. And I've had beautiful, amazing hearted men just tear up, recognizing that they want to be taken care of. Like, you know what I mean? They want to have to do all of it. They want to lean on someone, right? So, I mean, it's beautiful to watch, a warrior or like even an innocent become a warrior. Or like a tyrant has a hard time becoming a wizard. We're just trusting and manifesting and trusting that the universe has their back. They're like, what universe? Right? So it's nice I often say that we on our journey have evolved through all 9 of them. We have all 9 of them within us.
Right.
And we just lean into different ones at different times.
I can totally see that. Like how there's an element of each that I can kind of relate to in different ways. So definitely get that. So I'm hearing like the more someone can understand their archetype, the more they can look at the more they can look at their relationship and then it sounds like it's one of the first steps in having that peace, joy, and was it confidence? Yeah. Oh, very cool.
And I think married couples, when they or people dating, when they learn each other's archetype, it's a great conversation starter about how why we are the way we are.
Absolutely. Oh, for sure. Like I mean, like you've said, it's pretty fascinating when I sit down with a couple, because typically there will be like either the person who wants to talk about it and the person who doesn't, or the person who's numbers oriented and the person who isn't, or the person who says I'm bad at math. But what I find is a lot of times, so in my first meeting with people, I don't usually talk a lot about numbers. Like it's not really a lot about graphs and charts or anything like that. So a lot of times, whichever spouse is more hesitant to look at numbers or talk about numbers can get very interested in what's happening in a way that they're not used to. And so that's really fun to see. And then even when I do talk about numbers, and I usually do it in a way, like I take my master's background and I draw things out, I make them incredibly simple. And so a lot of times people feel like it's very non-threatening in the sense of like we're not gonna have a conversation that you can't understand. Like that's my goal. Like you're gonna be able to understand every conversation we have at all times.
We need more of you.
Yeah, well, there was a study a while back that said more than half of people are more confused about their finances after they meet with their advisor than before. And I think that it comes from, like, I used to hire and train advisors, and I think that there's a certain level of baffling people with BS sometimes, where it's like, I'm just going to talk really technical because I'm afraid someone's going to ask me a question and I'm going to have to admit I don't know something. Yeah. And so like I would hire advisors and they'd be just spouting like jargon and stuff. And I would pull out an empty piece of paper and draw, and people would say like, you can't draw. for people. Like, like you're meeting with these sophisticated physicians or business owners and you're going to do a drawing. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to do a drawing because, if they tell me not to, I'll stop. But most people really like it. So I'll start with a drawing. So yeah.
I love it.
Cool.
And it's like, we're all so different learners, right? Like we could be aesthetic, we could be visual, we could be auditory.
Absolutely.
It doesn't make sense that you think everyone's going to learn it the same way.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Some people respond more to stories, examples. Yeah, for sure. Awesome. Well, we've talked a lot about the archetypes. We've talked about the quiz. We've talked about the value in understanding your archetype and your partner's archetype. So what's the easiest way for people to find this quiz? I want to make sure people hear that, and I'll put the link everywhere this is posted.
Yeah, it's on my website, brendastlouis.com. And it comes up on the first page. Hopefully it stays that way. Someone's doing my website, redoing my website. So we'll see.
Keep it there. Yeah. So brendastlouis.com. Perfect. Yeah. And you get in there, take the quiz, you get your results. There's a video for every result. I think you made like a YouTube video kind of, perfect. Because awesome. No, that's amazing. So that's certainly, and then what else, we should talk very quickly about what is it? You mentioned a 30-day program. So what does it look like for people to work with you? What would you say is what someone who's listening to this saying, oh, I don't know if I should reach out to Brenda and ask her questions. What would you say is someone who could likely benefit from the work you do? What characteristics?
I don't work with everyone. Mm-hmm. So you have to meet a certain criteria, I guess, but I do work with a lot of people, and I love putting people through my 3-month immersive because that's where we start to rewire the brain. We do financial literacy, emotional literacy, all the things. And if you fit that paradigm and you want to work with me that way, you can book a call. I do about a half an hour call to just kind of get to know you, to see if it's a good fit, and then we can start.
Amazing. So same website, brendastlouis.com.
It's on there. You can just, it's a book a call with me.
Pick a time that works.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Very cool. Well, thank you so much for being on here. I really appreciate your insight. I've learned a ton. I feel like I need to watch every video about every archetype and keep it in mind, or maybe ask some of my clients to take the quiz to see what comes out. I think I'll understand people a lot better if I do that. But no, thank you so much for being on here.
Oh, my pleasure. And if you go to my YouTube channel, you can watch all the...
I wondered. I was like, I'm going to click on the YouTube channel there and sneak my way through all. Awesome. Okay, so want to make sure everyone knows where to find you. I'll say it one more time. So BrendaSt.Louis.com. That's where they find you.
Like the city, but I say St. Louis. Yeah.
St. Louis. Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you. This was so much fun. Thank you so much.
This is awesome. All right. Take care.
Bye.
Thanks so much for having joined me on this episode of A Clean Bill of Wealth podcast. I truly appreciate you taking the time to listen in. It really warms my heart when I see the number of listens go up. And feel free to scroll through all the other episodes where I've interviewed different amazing people and getting their insight into the lives of physicians and how they support them. And if you're left wondering anything around your financial plan, whether you're making the most of your corporation, if you're getting value for the fees that you're paying for your existing advisors, head on over to galenhelpsdocs.com. That's GALEN helpsdocs.com to download my free service guide and get links to the videos where I explain exactly how fees work in Canada and tips for picking an advisor that's going to work for you. Thanks again for joining me, and I'll see you on the next episode.